Okay, everyone, we're about to start. We've got about 100 people joining us from around the country. Just want to make sure that they're able to see us and hear us. Good, how's it going? All right. Okay, so it's dead on 3. Let's just wait a minute or two. There are a few people that, don't we, Vernon and Mel are. Yeah, Cape Town, of course. You made it in time, Mike. Okay, I think we tend to start on time these days. So I'd like to introduce our chairperson, Yvonne Pennington. She's going to come up and do the welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this BirdLife South Africa's 96th annual general meeting. Thank you to all of you here present today for giving up your Saturday afternoon, to our members and donors to come and listen to our annual feedback to you, our members and donors, on the health of the organization, and to listen to and to see in person all the people who've been doing the remarkable amount of work that they managed to get through in 12 months. I'd particularly like to thank our board members present, Darby Chamberlain, Matt Biden, Ishmael Borat, and Vernon Head, if he's here yet, as well as our honorary president, Professor Anushas Chinsami Turan, past chairman Roger Wanless, and Vernon Head again as a past chairperson, and Professor Susie Cunningham. Also welcome today are Greg Short and Anne Emmett, representing the Hans Houhausen Charitable Trust, who are major donors of ours. And then, of course, I'd like to thank and welcome to all those who are attending online. Again, particularly our board members, past chairpersons, Peter Sullivan and Philip Kalinikos, past board member Nigel Stainforth, the chairpersons of the Northern Region Bird Club Forum and the KwaZulu-Natal Bird Club Forum, Dennis Townsend and Nikki Forbes, respectively, chairman of our Audit and Risk Committee, Andrew Mitchell, another of our major donors, Neville Esdell, who's attending from France. Most of our staff who are not here in Cape Town are attending online. Some old friends I see attending from overseas. And to all of you, our members, without whose support we wouldn't be giving you as buoyant a report back as we will be doing today. I'd like to ask Mike Buckham, who's chairperson of the Cape Bird Club, to come and give a Cape Town welcome. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for introducing me, and thank you very much for asking me to do a welcome. It's an absolute pleasure. So welcome all the AGM attendees, and I'm so pleased you went through that long list of all the right people to welcome, because I don't have a very long list, but I'd just like to welcome BirdLife South Africa to Cape Town, the management, the executive, the non-execs, members. There's some familiar faces. There's some Cape Bird Club members here, lots of members of my committee, which is very nice to see. So welcome to Cape Town. So we're honored to be hosting the AGM in our city, and we're delighted that many of you have been able to see our birding backyard on such a glorious autumn day. Hopefully this dispels the myth that Cape Town has terrible weather. So I do hope that some of you took some advantage of this weather and went out and did some birding, looking for some of our endemic specials. So we've had a very long and fruitful association with BirdLife South Africa, and I personally have known Mark for many years. We sit together as advisory board members at the FITS, and it has been an incredible story and journey to see how BirdLife South Africa has grown under Mark's stewardship and all the people that work so hard, from a small conservation organization into the incredibly meaningful contributor to the South African conservation landscape that it is today. So as a Cape Bird Club, we make very small contributions to conservation in our province and our city, but we're very reliant on an organization like BirdLife South Africa to protect the bird species around us. So it is very apt at this event to mention how grateful and delighted we were to see the work that BirdLife has done on our most treasured species, the African penguin. I know I'm not going to be the only person to mention this, but this is such a good example of how important BirdLife is for our regional areas. African penguin is not restricted entirely to the Western Cape, but it is an iconic species for us and one we are very proud of, and we simply could not have played as big a role as BirdLife South Africa did in trying to save this bird. I personally have been to Stony Point multiple times in the last few weeks. It has something to do with a very rare African crake that was around the corner. And it reinforced just how important the hard-won fight that BirdLife put up in reaching a settlement with the Fisheries Department to expand the no-fishing zone in time and in space. So we're very, very grateful for the work that BirdLife South Africa does, and it's very relevant for us here in Cape Town. So before I formally hand over to Mark to run the afternoon's business, I'll quickly mention a few key things about the Cape Bird Club and the work that we do in the city. Don't worry, I'm not going to speak for too long. I know my committee members are panicking at this point in time. Okay, so we're officially the second oldest bird club in South Africa. We were very unfortunately pipped by the Wits Bird Club by literally a couple of months, and we've regretted those few months ever since. So we celebrated our 75th anniversary 2 years ago in 2023. So we consider our area to be the city of Cape Town boundaries, and we boast a species list of over 350 bird species. So we have a lot of rich bird life in wonderful habitats. So we are now officially the largest bird club in the country. We've got over 550 members that contribute every year. And in fact, we are actually still a vibrant and growing bird club. And that's quite hard in modern society with lots of online stuff available. It's good to see members joining up every single month. Linda, our membership secretary, gives us a list, and we have 10 to 15 people every single month joining the club. So we produce a world-class magazine in Promerops, not quite as shiny and glossy as the African BirdLife magazine. It represents the clubs and its members and their activities. We have very active face-to-face meetings once a month, our evening meetings, and we have lots of outings, at least twice a month and sometimes many more. And I think this is becoming rarer to actually have meetings in face-to-face settings. And we actually have speakers clamoring to come and speak to us at the Bird Club. Sharon, who looks after the evening meetings, she has to turn people away to come and speak to us at the club. We participate in Kirstenbosch and Bird and Reserve projects, counts, waterbird counts, the quacks, and we've been doing so for many years. A lot of our members Atlas, so we do a lot of contribution to citizen science. And one of the most meaningful things, we have a very active schools program that supports a number of schools on the Cape Flats. We assist with education and conservation education. We support a number of conservation efforts, with the continued efforts of saving the endemic black harrier being the one closest to our hearts. And for those of you that don't know, Peter Steyn was our honorary president who passed away last year. And endemic black harrier was something very close to his heart, and we try and honor him in continuing that work. We bought 3 trackers over the last 2 years at 25,000 Rand to 30,000 Rand a tracker. So we really do put our money where our mouth is when we have the money to spend. It's our most iconic raptor species, and it's an iconic, it's our most endangered raptor, and it's threatened by wind farms and habitat destruction. And I know that one day the Bird of the Year committee will accept my nomination of the black harrier as Bird of the Year. I've submitted now 3 nominations. Is it 5? I lost count. And I can assure you I will be submitting one every single year on behalf of the Cape Bird Club. And then lastly, just we have a vibrant a young birder program with a WhatsApp group with over 40 young birders and their parents, just to make sure that we don't do anything bad. And this WhatsApp group I have to silent every now and again because it's so active. We have such a lot of activity there. And I think many of you know Zoe Lunau. She was one of the first birders on that group, showing just how much success we've had in supporting young birders. We're very proud of Zoe and all she has achieved, but we also are very grateful for those people that have supported our young birders. And Penny's sitting there, she's done a lot of work with our young birders. Well, with that whirlwind tour of the Cape Bird Club, if you happen to be in our city and you're looking for some birds, please pop me a message or one of our committee members. I'm sure we can link you with someone to show you some of our endemics and some of our favorite birding spots. So thank you for asking me to do the welcome. It's an absolute honor. Lovely to be here, and I'll hand over to Mark to run the afternoon's activities.
Right, thank you. We have the following apologies. I don't know whether anyone else has any other apologies to add to this list. Right, the minutes of the 95th AGM have been previously circulated, and we'd like to confirm those minutes. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please, for the minutes of the 95th AGM, or anybody who has any comments to those minutes? Thanks, Fani. Somebody else? Thanks, Ishmael. Right, are there any matters arising from the minutes of the 95th AGM? It would appear not. Good, thank you. And I'm very happy now to give my chairperson's report for 2024. In fact, it's the chairperson's statement, which goes as this. As you read this report, this annual report that you hope you've all got copies of, you will see that our team of conservationists toils daily to implement the first part of our mission. The first part of our mission is to strive to conserve birds, their habitats and biodiversity through scientifically based programs and by supporting the suitable and equitable use of natural resources. You all knew that. The second part of our mission is to encourage people to enjoy and value nature. Firstly, because a healthy society requires a healthy environment in which to thrive. And secondly, because by doing so, we must surely increase the number of those who will conserve birds, their habitats and biodiversity. As the primary custodians of birds and their habitats in our country, we at BirdLife South Africa have a weighty responsibility, and we need all the awareness and support we can muster to achieve our mission for the benefit of all who live in our country. One way in which we garner support around the country is through a network of affiliated bird clubs. Bird clubs are associations of people whose members are interested in and concerned about all aspects of South African birds. Through club meetings and outings, members can become involved in research and monitoring projects, community involvement and education, and in these and many other ways, bird clubs play an indispensable role in encouraging people to value nature and spread the conservation message. They are therefore enormously important to BirdLife South Africa because they are the hubs of citizen scientists in every corner of the country. BirdLife South Africa has 40 affiliated bird clubs. The affiliation agreement that Bird Club signs sets out the guidelines that are intended to assist BirdLife South Africa, the club and its members, in understanding how best to cooperate in the shared vision of conserving our country's birds and promoting birdwatching. While many people join bird clubs for the social side of birding, others join to learn more about birds. As they learn, they often begin to recognize the need to conserve birds, and this leads many to go on and become members of and or donors to BirdLife South Africa. Of course, BirdLife South Africa has a greater role to play in encouraging people to enjoy and value nature, and it does this in many ways. One of these is by offering birders the opportunity of traveling to enjoy birds. We have an annual raffle for which the prize is a rock jumper trip to a foreign destination, and it has taken the winners thus far to Sri Lanka, Morocco, and Brazil. As often as we possibly can, we also organize our trips to give people the opportunity to bird further afield. In November 2024, 70 passengers joined our Rovos Rail birding safari to Mpumalanga and Limpopo, birding in a different location every morning. And in January 2025, 1,900 passengers will join Flock to Marion again to one of the remotest parts of the globe to rejoice in the abundance of seabirds that wheel around Marion and Prince Edward Islands in the Southern Ocean. At the same time, they will be mindful of the threats the seabirds face, threats that the Mars Free Marion project is preparing to address. Events have become a major activity at BirdLife South Africa. We hold our bird fair every year at which birders of all levels can explore all aspects of birding. We hold our Owls Awards event at which we recognize people who voluntarily make substantial contributions to the conservation of birds. It would be true to say that if the value of the time and resources that these volunteers give could be quantified, it would amount to a very large number. And finally, our Empowering People program is devoted to encouraging people to enjoy and value nature. The program works with schools in aligning birds and their habitats with their curricula, and it undertakes environmental education work in KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng. Its Abitourism project promotes the transformation and growth of birding tourism by training community bird guides and maintaining a network of BirdLife South Africa friendly recommended accommodations, tour operators, and course providers. The project also oversees the Go Birding online platform, the South African Listers Club, the South African Names for South African Birds project, which translates bird names into other official languages, and promotes birding in South Africa as a birding destination. If, as you peruse the contents of this annual report, you feel that you'd like to enjoy and value nature more than you currently are, please look up your local bird club or come and join us at one of our events, which you can find on our website. You won't look back. Right, thank you. I'd now like to call on Professor Anusias Chinsami-Turan to come and address us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here on this occasion, and I'm delighted to tell you a little bit about some of my research. So, oops, arrow key, sorry. Yeah, something's happening. No. I should have brought my mouse. Slide advance. Just the arrow key. Okay. So as some of you may know, I'm a paleontologist, and I particularly am interested in the origin and diversification of birds. So quite aptly today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my insights from deep time, and also what I think are lessons for the future. So if we look at the fossil record, we know that there have been 5 major extinctions that have rocked our planet. Most of you probably know that at each of these crisis events in biodiversity, more than 75% of life goes extinct. The one that you all probably know of is the one that occurred about 65 million years ago. This is the event that wiped out all non-avian dinosaurs. And the only lineage of dinosaurs that survived were birds. So the diversity of birds that we see today are really the descendants of dinosaurs. But the interesting thing is that if we look at the fossil record, we realize that birds originated about 150 million years ago. The earliest bird is Archaeopteryx, which dates to 150 million years ago. But since then, we see there was a real explosion of diversification of early birds. There were birds that were diving, there were birds that were flightless, and we know that there were many, many other kinds of birds as well. And the sad thing is that when we look at the fossil record, we see this incredible diversification of birds actually is completely depleted at the end of the Cretaceous. Because if you look at this chart, at the very bottom, you see the neornithines, right at the very bottom. That is the only lineage of these early birds that survive. And this is where the ancestors of modern birds are located. And the rest of the diversification we only find as fossilized bones, and sometimes, if we're lucky, we find impressions of their feathers. And that's all that remains of that early diversification of birds. If we look at our planet, the deep time fossil record and geological record tells us that our planet actually has fluctuated in different states. There were times when the planet was actually in an ice house stage. There were times when the planet was actually in a greenhouse state. And this we can track through time over at least 500 million years. The paleoclimate record tells us that at one time the poles were forested. The polar seas were warm and tropical forests grew at mid-latitudes. In fact, for most of Earth's history, our planet was in a greenhouse state, really absolutely lush. You may not believe it, but currently Earth is in an icehouse state. But not for long. Not for long, because ever since 1850, we've seen an increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And this has led to the climate changes that we are seeing today. It is predicted that by 2075, we'll have a doubling of the carbon dioxide from pre-industrial levels. This will mean that we will reach carbon dioxide levels that have never been seen for the past 35 million years. We will reach extreme hothouse conditions of the Jurassic era. So, what we understand is that Earth is in an icehouse state and it is rapidly moving towards a greenhouse state. But the problem is that this rise in temperature is extremely rapid. It's not the normal changes that have happened throughout Earth history. The changes are happening at an unprecedented rate. Already, we are seeing what's happening to biodiversity as our planet warms up. We know that biodiversity on the planet, birds on the planet, are facing severe crises. We see that there are range shifts in terms of where they are and where they used to be. We see changes in their life history events. We also are witnessing severe physiological and behavioral changes amongst birds and amongst other animals today. So the question is, we've seen, because of the deep time fossil record, we've seen that one lineage of birds survived the end of the Cretaceous extinction event. Today, according to the BirdLife International Report of 2022, we know that 1 in 8 bird species are facing extinction. They're being threatened with extinction. So who's going to survive this climate changes that we're seeing today? We all know what needs to be done to mitigate the effects of climate change. We have to keep our carbon emissions down, because we know that extinction risks for birds and other biodiversity increases as the temperature increases. We know we have to move away from coal and we need to move to more renewable energy sources. There are many other things that we know we need to do. We need to recycle more. We need to be less consumerist. And the bottom line is we all need to be better stewards of our planet. And I think you guys are here because you know that we have to protect our biodiversity. We have to conserve what we have today. And it's very important that we study our biodiversity as well. It's important that we support the conservation organizations such as BirdLife South Africa, WWF, SENCOB, and all these other organizations that also try to conserve species today. But one of the things that we know from the deep time fossil record is that we have to act now. We have to act now because otherwise all that will remain of the biodiversity that we have today, this incredibly rich biodiversity on our planet, may only be the bones and, if we're lucky, some taxidermy specimens. So my message to you is be better stewards of our planet. Thank you very much. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anusha. Thanks for your brilliant presentation. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to work with you during the last 5 years as our honorary president, and sadly your term has come to an end. But I will visit you again and again and join you in your office. So thanks. So it's my pleasure now to present the annual report, and I'm not going to do so on my own. As per the last few years, I will do so with the assistance of a few of my colleagues. But before I do so, I think we just need to pay tribute to a few people who passed away since the last AGM. Imran Vanka, who was the independent chair of a nominations committee. Pamela Isdell, who was one of our honorary patrons and also one of our Golden Bird patrons and one of our most important benefactors, and John Bradshaw, who passed away recently. And his widow, Alison, I think is in the meeting, joining us virtually. So yeah, very sad to see these people pass away, and we really appreciate the enormous contributions they made to our organization. Okay, so we have copies of the annual report for those who haven't picked up one at the desk. They're available on our website. If you'd like hard copies, please contact us and we can send them to you. I will be presenting some aspects of the annual report. And of course, the annual report is just a précis of what we've done in 2024. It's not possible for us to give all the work that we do any justice. But just a few slides to start. So what we have been doing over the last few years is to build a sustainable organization. That is absolutely key. And I think Anusha alluded to this. We've got to be around, we've got to be strong, we've got to be better. And if we are able to achieve all those things, we can do a lot for our country's birds. And those are the four sort of things that we have been focusing on: governance, finances, fundraising, our staff, and conservation, of course, then communicating our success. I'm going to speak to each of those points very briefly. So in terms of governance, we have a board of directors, which is led under the able leadership of Yvonne. We have various board subcommittees, some of them chaired independently. We have a strategy, and the board provides oversight, and we are also King 4 compliant. We also have, I think, 80 or 90 policies and procedures, which Isabel's been responsible for revising, updating, and even writing some of the new ones. Then what is really important is the finances and fundraising. Our financial administration, I believe, is impeccable, and pay credit to Fani du Plessis, our CFO, and his team of 3 bookkeepers. We have fundraisers finally. We have a Chief Philanthropy Officer, Taryn McKechnie, who you would have met. She stands out in the crowd. And we have an institutional fundraiser, Martin Taylor. We also have diverse income streams, and I believe this is important because if we lose a donor, we've got a whole host of other donors that continue supporting us. We have realized, and was discussed at recent board meetings, that our events are very important as fundraising initiatives, as we saw with our Flock to Marion earlier this year. And any funds that we receive, or which are any surpluses at the end of the year, we squirrel away into the BirdLife National Trust, and the investments in the BirdLife National Trust are now approaching 50 million. And David Lawrence, the chair, told me the other day we need to now start working on the next 50. And a lot of the funding that we receive is actually in the form of bequests. And what's really important is our staff. And we wouldn't be able to achieve what we do without our really competent, hardworking, dedicated staff. And this picture was taken just a week ago or so at La Palala, where we had our annual staff meeting, and I think 4 staff were missing, and including some of the Mouse Free Marion staff. But we have about 50 staff now, and we would not come close to achieving what we do without their incredibly hard work. And I think this is our success. We've built up some really excellent staff, and we are an employer of choice these days. And we were with Susie this morning, director of the FITS, and she said they providing through the various postgraduate initiatives at the FITS, including the conservation biology master's degree, some of the people that are employed by us. We need to do analysis one day, Susie, about how many of your graduates are employed by us. And then really importantly, we have to do good conservation work, and we need to communicate that work. We have a very, very strong science basis, and we can talk about this in the few presentations which follow mine. Science has to be the basis of what we do, because we need to be objective. There's little money to go around. We need to make sure that we spend it where it's most well needed. And when there are successes, we need to communicate those. And I think we are really doing that very well. And Kurt Martin, our communications manager, is growing that diversity of communications in the way we communicate our successes. And then awareness. There's many things we do to create awareness, the events that Yvonne spoke about, and all the other work we do to communicate what we do. And then there's Anne Crone, our editor, and there he is. So we believe, the world's top bird and birding magazine. Here's the latest issue for those who haven't seen it. We're very proud of this magazine. It's incredible, Anton. You're doing a superb job. And those are the covers of the 6 issues from last year. And the magazine continues to grow. We're seeing an increase in retail sales, dealing with the delivery issues as best we can. Thanks for that, Shireen. Okay, so I think we are achieving all of those things, and as a result, BirdLife South Africa is flourishing at the moment. I think we are doing well in our work, and we recognize as one of the continent's top conservation NGOs, which makes us, of course, very proud. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to my colleague, starting with Hanneline, who's going to basically introduce the presentations which will follow her. Thanks, Hanneline.
Hi, everyone, and lovely to be here with all of you this afternoon. So as Mark already mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the scientific basis of our conservation work. So absolutely everything that we do, all our conservation work is rooted in science. And our mission is to conserve birds and their habitats and also other biodiversity based on scientifically based platforms. So our mission actually aligns very closely with the BirdLife International Conservation Strategy, which is to conserve species and sites, and also to address the systemic drivers of biodiversity loss and to enable society for positive change. But importantly, this strategy has got 3 unique foundations: partnership, and then birds, and also science. And this allows us to be effective at conservation at a global, a regional, and also at a local scale. So we use cutting-edge methods in terms of our scientific approach at BirdLife South Africa. And just to mention a few of those things are the development of ecological niche models or habitat suitability models, and then also to use passive monitoring techniques such as camera traps and acoustic recorders, also remote sensing and tracking of our bird species, so using telemetry to understand the movement behavior of our bird species. So our team of conservation scientists are also contributing to peer-reviewed scientific research, and we publish in esteemed journals. We also present our findings at international conferences. So last year was indeed an outlier for us with a record number of scientific publications published. And then later today, after 3 years of work, our science and innovation team will launch our revised Red Data Book of Birds of Lesotho, South Africa, Lesotho, and Eswatini. And this publication is absolutely critical in guiding our conservation strategies and our conservation action. So our team of conservation scientists are going to briefly run through some of the innovative projects with you today, but I'm just going to talk about secretary birds and vultures. So the Secretary Bird Tracking Project is our longest standing project, was initiated in 2012, and we've managed to deploy 24 units on secretary birds. We use this telemetry to understand and to study the movements, the habitat use, and the survival of secretary birds across South Africa. Through this, we're able to update our habitat suitability models and not only learn more about the movements of juvenile secretary birds, but also now understand the breeding movement of adults. And we're in the process of building flight risk models in the light, which is important in the light of wind energy development in the grasslands areas. Then about 8 years ago, we started our vultures and lead project. And following a number of peer-reviewed scientific publications, it was published that culminated in Linda van der Heever's PhD. We now are able to start an advocacy project, which is to drive the shift to lead-free ammunition, so to move away from lead-based ammunition. This has got human health implications as well. So our lead advocacy and our vultures project in 2024 compiled a comprehensive list of lead-free ammunition available in South Africa, and also assisted key reserves in the Greater Kruger area in finding optimal calibers for their culling operations. Then we also fitted tracking devices to some of our white-backed vultures at a critical breeding site in the Northern Cape at Dronfield Nature Reserve. And this is to determine the impact of lead on the movement behavior of these fledglings or once they fledge. Thank you.
Thanks, Annalene. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to report back quickly on our automated penguin monitoring system project, which was primarily led last year by Eleanor Weideman, who's now doing a PhD under our co-supervision on these weighbridges. And I just want to acknowledge Pierre Retief, who now lives in the Netherlands. He's the engineer who made all of this possible. So we've outlaid about 4 systems. It's 4 systems now of the 7 largest African penguin colonies in South Africa. So we've got systems out at Robben Island on the west coast, 2 on the south coast at Stony Point and Dye Island, and 1 in Algoa Bay at Bird Island. And 2024 marked the first year of a complete series of data from all 4 of those sites. So just to put you in the picture, what is an automated penguin monitoring system? It's a system that was initially invented actually in the 80s for Adelie penguins in Antarctica. And we've sort of modified that with Pierre's new design, which includes 2 scales. That allows us to get the direction the birds are going, but also to refine the weights of the birds. And those 2 scales and an RFID reader, which is basically a pit tag reader to identify individuals, is all connected to a processing unit, as you can see in the white box over here. I've got a pointer. And all that information is transmitted via cell phone networks. And you can actually see some of that data raw live. I'll get into that a bit later. So what are we doing with these systems? So the purpose of these systems, as you know, African penguins are in a critical situation, a forecasted 10-year extinction if we don't do something urgently. So the purpose of these systems is to weigh their condition, so the amount of weight they lose and gain in near real time, but also the activity budgets, how much time they spend at sea. And this information we can use to monitor the current island closures, which are going to be reviewed in 6 years, and then in place till 10 years. So there's likely going to be 2 reviews, but they can also inform resource managers about the state of the birds. So if they see mass die-offs of chicks or that sort of thing, they can look at the system and see if the conditions out at sea are playing an influence in that. So they're the 4 systems. I just want to acknowledge Massmart, who paid a huge amount for contracting our engineer, but also for these systems, Saving Animals from Extinction, for contributing to the Dye Island APMS, and the University of Exeter, who contributed towards the Robben Island system. And then Pierre developed for us last year this dashboard, which allows us to go into each system to monitor the status of the actual operations. So in terms of the power supply, to see if it's waning, if we need to get out there, replace a battery, there's something wrong with the solar panels, but also give us an indication of how the computer processes are doing, and also gives us metrics on how many birds pass the system, how many RFID tags pass each system. So we can log into each bird every day, which is what Philip 4E is doing now, so that we can anticipate if there are any faults and we can get onto the colony as soon as possible so we get consistent data. And if you're more interested in these weighbridge systems, you can visit penguinalert.org, which the website came live last year in about June, and you can log into each of these systems and look at the raw data in terms of the weights leaving and coming back from the colonies. I'm just going to do a presentation on behalf of Philip 4E, who just started with us this year as the Coastal Seabird Project Manager, and he's really hit the ground running with his technological advances. So as you're aware, there's been recently expanded island closures that'll be in place for 10 years. And one of the big concerns is obviously compliance in terms of the commercial fisheries, avoiding these no-take areas. Generally, during the island closure experiment between 2008 and 2021, there was generally mostly compliance within the industry, but there were some worrying incidents in a couple of years around Dassin and St. Croix Islands. So what Phil's developed to sort of facilitate a watchdog role from BirdLife side and also to get the public involved is linking in to Global Fishing Watch data. And what Global Fishing Watch facilitates is a lot of different functions to look at where vessels go and where they anticipated to be fishing. So Phil has integrated Global Fishing Watch data into an application that's currently in progress, and that allows us to zoom into a particular island and see if there's any indiscretions, and also flag any transgressions into these areas in a database so that we can alert the authorities who mandated to enforce these closures, and also to make it public to the vessel companies who are responsible for these things. So we're hoping that this app will be available towards the end of this year so that the public can access it. And we're hoping that, it plays a good watchdog role in fisheries avoiding these closed areas. And with that, I'll move on to Alan. Thanks.
Good afternoon. So, conservation. We wouldn't be able to do the work that we do within the Science and Innovation Program at BirdLife South Africa, thanks to many of you members in the audience. Birders and BirdCom members, everyone who lifts a finger to enter a record into BirdLassa and make a contribution to the SABIP2 databases. South Africa's most important databases are housed at the Fitzpatrick Institute of African Ornithology, a premier research institute, mentoring researchers and leaders of tomorrow. So a special mention to Claire, who's been appointed a Fellow of the Royal Society, an exclusive club of the world's most influential researchers. At the Science and Innovation Program, we work in close partnership with the Fitzpatrick Institute to support projects such as SABIP2, CAR and Quack, and Saffring. We encourage, we support, and we train birders wanting to make birding count. So as you know, SABIP2 is one of the world's premier databases on bird distributions and now also bird trends. And none of this would be possible without you. SABIP2, the Coordinated Avifaunal Road Count, better known by its acronym CAR, and the Coordinated Waterbird Counts, or QUAC, are citizen science monitoring projects which have been running for an extraordinary length of time. CAR, which monitors large birds along driven transects, provides valuable count data and has provided insights into birds and declines of iconic species such as blue crane and southern black rahan. It is vital that these projects continue into the future. An example of the use of this data was undertaken recently by the Centre for Statistics and Ecology in the Environment, better known as SEEK, at the University of Cape Town. The resulting project was called Birdie and provided amazing insights into the status of South Africa's waterbirds. And unfortunately, the trends are worrying. The importance of BirdLassa, the bird logging app many of us may take for granted, cannot be overstated. BirdLassa was developed as a passion project by Henk Nel that almost doubled the annual submissions of full protocol cards, the lifeblood of SABIP2, and the science which emanates from this data. So as well as increasing contributions to Suburb 2, BirdLife South Africa, through the set of threatened species causes or causes on BirdLife with BirdLasser, provide valuable additional information, count data, and GPS location data. These GPS locations allow us to undertake fine-scale distribution models which provide better information on where to look for threatened species and improve the effectiveness of resulting conservation actions. BirdLasser has proven to be most valuable and needs to continue to be supported. David Ellis-Smith, BirdLife South Africa's Science and Spatial Planning Manager, uses GPS locations together with environmental data such as rainfall, annual temperature, and land cover variables with machine learning methods such as Maxent, produce fine-scale habitat suitability models. And this data pipeline builds on work done previously by Ansratif at BirdLife South Africa, feeding into the national site screening tool, which helps informs where developments can and should take place to ensure developments have reduced impact on our threatened species. An example of such a habitat suitability model is shown here on the screen for Botha's Lark. Increasingly, we need to account for the impacts of climate change on distributions. The chart on the left here, or the map on the left, shows the distribution model for Botha's Lark based on old climate, the one we probably grew up with. The one on the right shows predicted distribution under 1.5 degrees of warming, basically the world we're starting to live in now. Suitable climate for this species and habitat are moving south. Whether the Botha's Lark knows that it needs to be changing its range remains to be seen. But we will continue to use these tools to help direct monitoring going forward, hopefully to save this critically endangered species from extinction. And again, we wouldn't be able to do this without you.
Thanks, Alan. So in this second presentation, I'm just going to tell you about some of the passive monitoring techniques that we're employing at BirdLife South Africa. This is specifically focused on camera traps and acoustic devices to advance our research and also to inform the conservation of some of our threatened bird species. So back to white-backed vultures again. We'll be able to deploy camera traps on the nests of white-backed vultures at Dronfield Nature Reserve, the same site, critical breeding site in the Northern Cape, to study specifically the prevalence of egg and chick predation on this critically endangered species. And then we've learned a lot about the lives of white-backed vultures, perhaps also of their love language. And through understanding their breeding biology, we were able to share this footage through BirdLife South Africa social media platforms. And Wesley Gush, who's a PhD student who's associated with BirdLife South Africa, has achieved success through installing camera traps on secretary bird nests. This is specifically done to investigate the impact of climate change or warming climate and also to monitor the breeding success of the species. And then on to what I think you all know, one of my personal favorites, white-winged flufftail. So more than 10 years ago, we started to invest very heavily as BirdLife South Africa into the research and conservation of the white-winged flufftail. So our team developed two camera trap designs, one that was freestanding and the other camera trap tunnel, as you can see here on the screen. And that actually allowed us to study the behavior of this very secretive, elusive, rare threatened bird that's found in the understory in the wetlands. And because we were able to also record the call of the species and describe the call of the species, in addition to the camera traps, we could also use acoustic recorders, which allowed us to cover a much greater area than only using camera traps. And this specifically helped us to record the presence of the species and also to understand the habitat requirements of white-winged flufftail. So pre-2015, we had about 7 locations known in South Africa where the species occur. Using these passive monitoring techniques, so using camera traps and acoustic recorders, we now know of 23 locations in South Africa where the bird is occurring. This ranges from northern Mpumalanga to southern KwaZulu-Natal, all along the eastern escarpment. This is, of course, the breeding habitat for white-winged flufftail. So we're in this regional red list that we'll be launching today. We'll be downlisting white-winged flufftail from critically endangered to endangered. So it is a success for us. And this is based on our improved knowledge of the species. So with that, I have to say that our updated habitat suitability model is still just indicating that there's about 20 square kilometers of habitat available for the species in the region. It remains rare and threatened, and just reinforces how important it is that we protect our high altitude wetland ecosystems, and the species will remain critically endangered globally. Thank you. And on to reason.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reason Nyengera. We are with the Albatross Task Force together with Andrea. We work in trying to address seabed bycatch in South Africa. So seabed bycatch is one of the most threat to birds, and seabeds are the most threatened group of species globally. And then the most threat of it is coming from the fishing vessels. As they are fishing, birds are caught on hooks, and some they interact with the warp cables, and some are caught in nets as fishing process is happening. So one of the most important mitigation measure is to use the bird scaring lines. So bird scaring lines, what they do is that they just scare away the birds from the danger zone, or they just scare away the birds from the hooks as the fishing operation is happening. However, we have got a challenge with the compliance of using it. Some of the fishermen, they use it when they want. Some of them, they don't even pay attention to it. But some, maybe they just forget. So in 2004 and 2019, Victor came with Victor came with this new idea of electronic monitoring device, which we use on which is used on the bird scaring lines to monitor whether the bird scaring lines are out or not. So this was a great idea, and then we worked together with Imvelo to develop this, and then to help him develop his proof of concept. And then let us hear from Andrea, who is not here, to what the device does. Yes.
The Imvelo Blue bird scaring line compliance device was invented by Victor Nkongo. This remote electronic monitoring tool records the tension produced by the bird scaring line as it is towed behind a fishing vessel. In 2019, the Albatross Task Force and Imvelo partnered to develop and trial the first prototype. Today, 2024, the water and tamper-proof device is Wi-Fi enabled, allowing crew or observers to check the deployment status of the bird scaring line. The device attaches directly onto the bird scaring line with a weak link to prevent loss or damage to the device in case of line entanglement or rupture, and is continuously collecting data. Nelson Miranda shows the data logger interface displaying real-time tension data together with the date and time that a bird scaring line is either deployed or retrieved. A 3-month battery life and a waterproof charging port allows for the use during longer sea trips. The data is encrypted and stored internally and can be transferred to the cloud. A magnetic on-off mechanism prevents environmental damage from continuous exposure to the elements. The device has been rigorously tested and is ready to be used on any vessel. Compliance with the use of bird scaring lines is key to protecting over 40 seabird species and 18 of the 22 albatross species in the world, preventing the needless deaths of hundreds of thousands of seabirds annually.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea, for a clear explanation of the device, how it works. So now the way forward with the device, now it has brought good attention here in South Africa. So MSC is going to fund a pilot use of the bird scaring line monitoring device on trawl vessels, and also it has been also recognized with the agreement for conservation of albatrosses and petrels. So they've recognized it, and then they've what we call recommend some other countries to use it as well to monitor the use of bird scaring lines. And then in 2024, ATF in Argentina also were willing to trial the device in their fleet, so they are in the process of trialing it. And then we are also going to encourage the local fleet for demersal long lining and pelagic long lining to use the bird scaling line monitoring device as well. And we also going to collaborate with Namibia for its regional use. I would like to thank the inventor of this amazing electronic monitoring device, Mr. Victor Sihle Ngobo, and also Nelson Miranda, who has also helped in the development of the mitigation device. And also, we also want to thank Invelo Environment Blue Consultants for its work, which they have been pulling with their observers, and also an agreement for conservation of albatross and petrels, and MSC for funding this device, the development of the device, and then the South African industry also for allowing us to test the device, and also siyabonga kakhulu. Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Good afternoon, everyone. If you've been paying attention, you would have heard that climate change is a major threat to biodiversity, and we need to do something about it, and that includes shifting to renewable energy. And if you were also paying attention, I think wind energy was already mentioned 3 times as a significant threat to biodiversity. So our job, our being John Gibbs and myself, is to try and reconcile those 2 things, to try and help the responsible development of renewable energy. And we cannot do it alone, so I have to acknowledge a long list of partners and sponsors who support our work and who collaborate in the developing the tools and guidelines we do. So our approach is, I guess you could call it adaptive management. It's learning by doing. We start off by trying to support the appropriate location and management of wind energy facilities based on the best available scientific information. But we know that we get things wrong. So we try and ensure that monitoring of the impacts on birds at wind energy facilities is undertaken, and that we established many years ago through our best practice guidelines. What we then do is we collate all that monitoring data. So it's not just sitting at individual wind farms, but it's all pooled in a rather depressing fatality database that I manage. And then we produce a summary of the outcome of monitoring. We raise awareness of all relevant stakeholders, what the actual impacts and lessons are, so we can quickly as possible improve environmental impact assessments and mitigation at facilities, and so the process goes. So last year we spent a lot of time working on collating all that information about what's actually happening at our operational wind energy facilities, which culminated in the release of this report, which was released earlier this year. And it did include some rather depressing statistics where we can now quite clearly show that for some of our bird species, including the black harrier, which was mentioned earlier, it's already occurring at levels that are likely unsustainable. We need to do something, and we need to do something urgently. It's not all bad news. There are some very exciting solutions on the horizon. Blade patterning, so essentially increasing the visibility of turbines, is one exciting measure that has had very promising results in Norway, and equally not scientifically or statistically robust yet, but we're hoping we'll get there in South Africa. What we needed to do is make sure that we overcame the legislative challenges with the Civil Aviation Authority as well as industry's concerns. So together with the South African Wind Energy Association and experts like Dr. Rob Simmons, we produced guidelines, and we are going to be seeing more and more wind farms testing this very exciting but still experimental mitigation measures in South Africa. Another exciting mitigation measure is shutdown on demand, which essentially means that you stop the turbines turning in real time when birds are at risk of collisions. And this can either happen using technology or observers. And what we learned very quickly from the first wind farms in South Africa that tried to implement it is that the details really matter. Some wind farms implemented it with fantastic success and others not so much. And through, again, engaging with industry, the need for better guidance on how to implement this measure was clear. And we appointed Wild Skies and AfriAvian to draft these guidelines, underwent a lot of stakeholder consultation. And again, these guidelines will be released later this year, hopefully before the end of the month. And that's me.
Okay, Jess is not here, but she's probably online joining us from Johannesburg. So we have a little video we'll show.
How is technology helping us conserve the charismatic long-distance migrant, the European roller? Hello everybody, I'm Jessica Wilmot, BirdLife South Africa's Flyway and Migrants Project Manager, here to give you some insight on a very exciting European roller monitoring project. Let's start by picturing a bird weighing less than 150 grams, flying over 2,000 kilometers non-stop across the Arabian Sea. And that's just one leg of the European roller's incredible 12,000 kilometer annual migration. And the only reason we know that this happens is thanks to satellite tracking technology. The European roller migrates along the African-Eurasian flyway, one of the world's most important bird migration corridors. To protect migratory species like the European roller, we can't just focus on one site or even one country. We need to take action across the species' entire range, because what happens to them in one place impacts the population elsewhere. So to protect the European roller in its range, we first need a clear picture of what happens in every season of its life cycle, from the breeding in the north to its migration to the non-breeding season in the south. Here in Southern Africa, where we host the species during its non-breeding season, we still know very little about the population that spends at least 4 to 5 months here. And for the Seminawi subspecies breeding in Central Asia, the migration routes were almost completely unknown until now. These are just a few of the questions we're trying to answer with technology. Since 2024, we've deployed 7 solar-powered satellite trackers on European rollers in South Africa. These trackers have given us near real-time data on where the birds travel, rest, and feed as they migrate to Central Asia and back. They've already revealed critical sites in countries like Somalia and Uzbekistan, and shown us high-risk zones like long ocean crossings and dangerous stopovers. It's giving us insight we've never had before. And this isn't just about maps and movements. We're using the data to drive real conservation action, helping identify high-priority sites and areas needing protection. The data helps us prioritize where to act, guides international partnerships, and supports the Flyway Action Plan. It's also brought the public, like yourselves, into the story, whether through educational content or connecting with donors who now follow individual birds on their journey. Technology is doing more than showing us where these birds go. It's helping us know where conservation action is required to protect them. The European roller is reminding us that science can guide action, build connections, and inspire support across continents. None of this would be possible without your support, though. So thank you for being part of this journey.
Thanks, Jess. Okay, I'd just like to almost end off this with just a couple of projects I'd also like to mention. One is the very successful litigation and the out-of-court settlement, which was alluded to. And it's fantastic to have Natalie here and Nikki from Sancob, because we were co-litigants in this process. We took huge risk. We had to consult with our board, and we won. And we secured closed areas to fishing around 6 colonies. And it's also nice to have Kate here as well, our attorney, one of our attorneys that worked with us on this project. And we will speak briefly about this later. But this is one of the highlights of my life, and I think one of the most significant things we've achieved. And it's great to partner with Sancob on this, Natalie. So thank you for that. And Hanneline mentioned Boerterslark. This species is probably the most threatened bird in Africa. And the board was very sort of fleet-footed last year to make important decisions, including at a strategy meeting in Wackerstrom, about changing our focus of our work at Wackerstrom to move away from tourism to conservation and research in order to save this very, very threatened species, and a few others that are associated with it in the grasslands, such as rudslark and yellow-breasted pipit. So watch the space for developments. We've got a team of 3 that we've employed and 1 part-time to help us study, conserve this bird, which is literally on the brink of extinction. And of course, I have to mention the Mouse Free Marion project. This is the most ambitious thing that we've ever undertaken. It's done in collaboration with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. Huge progress is being made, particularly in the research that's being done on Marion Island. We had a team of 5 people on the island for the last month or so. 2 are remaining. They'll be doing field work for the rest of the year. We are progressing the regulatory approvals that are needed for us to undertake the work. And of course, our fundraising is going well. At a gala dinner in Geneva a couple of weeks ago, we raised $1 million, but we've still got a long way to go with our fundraising. And the Mouse Free Marion team, there's a number of them here. Maybe just if they could stand for a moment so we can see them, starting with Anton, the project manager. Please, everybody involved. Sue, assistant project manager, and Liesel and Robin. I think Anton has a team of 9 people. Is it 9? I lose track. There's 2 on the island now. But it's a great privilege for me to work with such a competent, hardworking, dedicated team. As we often say, we probably could have not assembled a better team to undertake this work. And Anton reports to me, and it's just such an honor for me to work with you and your team, Anton. And we're going to pull this off, and it's going to be one of the most successful bird conservation achievements in the history of the planet. And we're going to do it, and we're going to do it successfully. And thank you to everybody who supported this important project. Okay, I'm just going to call up Taryn to say a couple of words.
Good afternoon, everyone. BirdLife South Africa is a donor-funded organization, and we can't achieve these amazing conservation successes that you've heard about this afternoon without your help. So I'm here to say a big thank you to every individual, every foundation, trust, and business and company who donates and helps us achieve success for conservation. So thank you for being part of our giving community, our donors and funders, our Conservation League donors, our corporate members, and our Golden Bird patrons. Without you, our work won't be possible. Thank you for giving conservation wings.
Good afternoon, everyone. So you can see in the annual report, there's a whole section about all the highlights that we're working on in 2025. So there's just 3 brief ones that I highlight here that wasn't mentioned earlier in the presentations. So firstly, following the successful litigation to secure no-take zones around African penguin colonies, we are securing funding to address systemic threats to not only African penguins, but also the wider Benguela upwelling ecosystem. Secondly, our Sustainable Livelihoods project, working to empower communities around the Nsekeni Nature Reserve, is going very well, but we need to secure more funding to expand the important work that they do. And lastly, the facilities of our Wakkerstroom Conservation Centre will be renovated and repurposed this year to enable the optimal use by the conservation staff working on conserving Botaslark and other related projects in the area. And that then concludes the presentation on the annual report. So unfortunately, our treasurer, Philip Kalanikos, couldn't be here today, so I'll handle the next 2 points on the agenda, both point 7 and point 8. Firstly is the treasurer's report. So these slides that you will see are extracts from the financial statements, of which copies you can also get at the front desk. I'll start with the statement of comprehensive income, but first the introduction. I'm pleased to report that BirdLife South Africa has achieved a net income from operations for the 15th consecutive year. The net income from operations for the year ended 31 December 2024 amounted to 2,968,000 compared to 2,377,000 in 2023. Let's now look at how this was achieved. Looking at the statement of comprehensive income, unrestricted donor funding has increased from 5.2 million the prior year to 5.4 million in 2024, largely thanks to our loyal Golden Bird patrons who collectively donated close to 3.2 million rand in 2024. Investment income in the form of interest earned increased significantly in 2024 to 3.3 million due to our healthy cash reserves earning interest at favorable interest rates. Net admin expenditure increased by 23% to 6.6 million. The increase is mainly due to a business division allocation made to the conservation division for project vehicle purchases. Furthermore, retrenchment costs resulted from a strategic change of focus at the Wakkerstroom Centre, as well as annual salary increases and the impact of inflation also added to the increased costs. The significant increase in net income generated by events compared to the prior year is due to income from the Rovers Rail Birding Safari, as well as a portion of the commission of Flock to Marion 2025 that we could accrue in 2024. Looking at membership, while income from general membership has remained relatively stable, the 27% increase in net income on membership to 965,000 is thanks to the growing number of Conservation League donors and additional donations made by members. 2024 was the first year that the philanthropy officer and institutional grant writers were active for a full 12 months, hence the perceived increased loss reflected under the fundraiser line of the statement. However, income generated by these two positions are incorporated in other relevant programs. The activities of these two positions were integral to the increased core donor funding mentioned earlier, as well as the expansion of work by the Conservation Division. The communications program established in 2022 has significantly increased our social media footprint and brand awareness in a relatively short period of time. The increased costs in 2024 are due to the expansion of our promotional work, as well as general inflation-linked cost increases. Publications consisting of African BirdLife magazine, the Ostrich Journal, and the annual calendar incurred a net loss of 49,000. This loss represents a 77% improvement on the prior year, mainly due to increased advertising revenue and the fact that all calendars were sold last year. The net income of Shop for the Birds was 73,000, a 52,000 rand increase from the prior year. And then during 2024, a strategic decision was made to change focus of activities at the Wakkerstroom Centre, as Mark mentioned earlier. And accommodation facilities at the centre were closed for tourists, with a focus shifting towards projects aiming to conserve Bothauslark and other threatened species in the area. The operating loss of the centre increased from 72,000 rand in 2023 to 452,000 in 2024. This was due to income from accommodation ceasing in September, before the main tourist season actually started, as well as less donations received during the year. The net effect of the above-mentioned programs is a net income from operations of 2.968 million, as mentioned earlier. But all business division activities are ultimately aimed at supporting BirdLife South Africa's principal objective, and that's the conservation of our country's birds and their habitats. And all conservation projects and programs were sufficiently funded during the year. Funding received in advance for conservation projects is recognized as income as and when project expenses are incurred, hence the break-even figure for the Conservation Division. Conservation Division expenditure and income increased by 4% to 34.6 million. The increase is a direct reflection of the increase in important work that the organization does. The budget of the Landscape Conservation Program in particular increased by 17%, reflecting the increased focus on work linked to Bothauslark conservation. The fact that income continues to match and indeed exceed the increased costs is a reflection of the sound financial management and good corporate governance of the organization. I would like to express gratitude to all our donors and funders for their support in ensuring the organization's activities were funded during the year. In addition to the net income from operations as reported above, several non-operating transactions took place that are showed separately in the statement. We received 829,000 rand in bequests during the year towards the long-term sustainability of the organization. The value of the property in Claremont, Cape Town was adjusted to its market value of 6.4 million, and both the bequests received and the Claremont property were donated to the BirdLife National Trust. Hence the non-operating donation of 7.2 million reflected. The last non-operating transaction was a 5.5 million donation to the organization from the BirdLife National Trust. In summary then, the organization achieved a net income of 1.48 million for the year. Then looking at the statement of financial position, and firstly non-current assets, the book value of property, vehicles, furniture and equipment decreased to just over 1 million due to the donation of the Claremont property to the BirdLife National Trust. All the financial ratios of the organization remain healthy. Current assets, mainly comprising cash and cash equivalents, are sufficient to cover the current liabilities that mainly consist of project funding received in advance. For current assets, inventory has increased with the increased sales activity in the shop. Trade and other receivables have remained relatively stable, and cash equivalents have increased by 4.4 million due to the net income achieved as well as increased project revenue received in advance. Non-current liabilities consist of a conservation project vehicle purchase through a hire purchase arrangement. In the current liabilities, project funds received in advance have increased by 1.7 million, linked to our increased conservation work. Trade and other payables have decreased by 1.4 million due to the organization settling amounts payable to the BirdLife National Trust that was due at the end of 2023. A 4.5 million loan received from the BirdLife National Trust in 2022 to finance the purchase of the Cape Town premises was settled in 2024. So at just under 11 million, the retained earnings remain healthy with sufficient reserves available to cover 12 months worth of gross admin expenditure. So the financial statements have been available for review by members on the organization's website. And as I said, there's also copies at the back available if you want to view them. So the annual financial statements for the year ending 31 December 2024 have been audited by KPMG and approved by the Board of Directors. I thank KPMG again for their services and appreciate the wonderful relationship that exists and for the advice received during the year. And I then would like to propose that the financial statements be approved and adopted by members. Can I please get a proposer and a seconder? Vernon, proposer. Thanks, Darby, seconder. Thank you for that. Then lastly from me, next point on the agenda is appointment of the external auditors. So as mentioned, we have always had a good relationship with KPMG. They've been our auditors for many years. And both the Audit and Risk Committee and the Board is happy to recommend their appointment as auditors for the 2025 financial year again. So again, can I please have a proposer and a seconder from the committee? Thanks again, Vernon. Devon, seconder. Thank you very much, everyone.
We have an incredibly competent CFO. It's a pleasure for me to work with him. Not only is he competent at his work, but also he's one of the most knowledgeable ecologists and birdwatchers I know. It's a pleasure having you on the team, Fani. And I think it's 12, 13 years, I forget how long, 12 years. Okay, every now and again, BirdLife South Africa looks at its constitution to see whether any changes are needed, whether there's changes in legislation, whether it's still fit for purpose. And we did this last year. And there was a team of a board subcommittee that met multiple times to look at the constitution and make some tweaks. And this was led by Roger Wanless, who's an attorney. He is here as well. Roger, put up your hand so we can see where you are. He won't do that. And he is an attorney. He was previous chairperson of BirdLife South Africa. And Yvonne, Philip Kalinikos, and Khaleboy Modisepode, who's also an attorney, served in that committee. So there are a number of documents which you would have received. One is a revised constitution, the one I have on the left there as well, which incorporates all the changes. The one on in the middle is a marked up version using track changes of the constitution, indicating the amendments that have been made. And thirdly, the one on the right is a memorandum to the members noting the important changes that are being proposed. Okay, so I'm just going to run through some of these changes. Okay, one is that it's no need anymore for 5.14 in the Constitution because we're not a conduit PBO. Legislation doesn't need us to include that point in the Constitution. We've also made a couple of changes to the composition of the board. One is we no longer have a chairman, we have a chairperson. We're gender neutral. There's also a proposal that we have a third staff member serve as a director on the board, and that is the head of conservation, with Hanleen Smith-Robinson being the current incumbent. There's a point on the tenure members of the board where the BirdLife South Africa's nominations committee, which is chaired by an independent person, plays a role in the nomination and recruitment of members to the board. And then Anusha has been an incredibly hard act to follow. We worked very hard to try and find somebody as good, if not better, and it's an absolutely impossible thing. So we've decided we're not going to make it absolutely compulsory, essential. We have an honorary president. We will keep looking, Anusha, and maybe you've got to give us some advice on somebody that will fill that important position. And we're also going to appoint honorary patrons when necessary. There was also a request from the Audit and Risk Committee that we increase the number of people on the Audit and Risk Committee from 5 to 7. So those are the major changes proposed, and the documents, as I say, were sent out. They've been available on our website. You would have seen them. We need a proposer and a seconder for these amendments to the Constitution, please. Vernon and Darby, Isabel. Thank you. Thanks very much for that. And just thanks very much to the subcommittee that worked very hard on this, and Roger, to you in particular. Thanks for all your hard work. Really do appreciate it. You remain involved in the organization. We're not letting you go too easily. Okay, so in the back of the annual report, you will see a list of staff, but importantly, you'll see a list of the patrons. Pamela's still listed as a patron. She passed away on the 18th of March, so she'll be not on there in future. Anusha, the president, but importantly, there's the board of directors and the various board subcommittees. But who's missing now under that point 3, bullet 3, board of directors is Hanleen. And I'd like you all to give her a hand of applause as our newest director.
This year, we have no nomination or election of any office bearers. So we can move on to the initiatives and publications, which I think Mark's going to handle.
I gave everyone the opportunity to stretch your legs. Okay, so Vernon Head is sitting up here with the red socks and the interesting outfit and ponytail, is our most eccentric board member and one of my greatest friends. And we come up with lots of creative ideas. And he said we will launch initiatives and publications at our annual general meetings every year. And that was something when you were chair, you insisted, you told me, instructed me. It was one of my KPIs, Vernon. So we're going to launch a few. And firstly, Bird of the Year 2025, you all know what it is. Nandi is not here, but we have a little...
BirdLife South Africa has taken significant strides in promoting environmental education awareness through a structured and impactful program. This initiative, which spans multiple schools and provinces, has showcased a strong commitment to fostering environmental stewardship among young learners. As you know, this year our Bird of the Year is the red-billed oxpecker, which was launched last year during Birding Big Day. And as part of this campaign, BirdLife South Africa has developed a poster that has been shared amongst a very wide network of members and schools and educational groups. The first program officially commenced with the webinar launch on the 5th of March, during which 4 meticulously developed lesson plans were unveiled. These lesson plans were results of meaningful collaboration with the St. Stithians College, emphasizing the importance. Following all of this, we held a second webinar on the 21st of May to gather some feedback and insights from groups who are actively implementing this program, this interactive session. So participation from key stakeholders, including the Northlands Primary School in KZN and the Boys and Girls Club of South Africa in Johannesburg. Their contributions played a pivotal role in refining the program and ensuring its relevance to the targeted audience. Here are some examples of some of the artwork the kids the children developed as part of this program. Here we see some collages of the oxpecker done by the grade 4s, and we see some water paintings done by the grade 5s. of Northlands Primary School, and also the grade 6 developed their own structures, their own sculptures, which now hang in their foyer, their school's foyer. And this is all to say how interesting it was for them to learn of the many shades of brown. As part of its resource development efforts, BirdLife South Africa launched a teacher's handbook and an additional set of 6 lesson plans. These comprehensive addition materials aim to equip educators with the tools needed to deliver engaging and effective lessons on environmental topics to further enhance accessibility and understanding. An infographic booklet has also been developed and offering a visual and appealing overview of key concepts. The implementation phase of this program by BirdLife South Africa is rolled out across 8 schools over 3 provinces. This wide reach underscores the organization's dedication to making a tangible impact in diverse community. And thank you to the Hans Horizon Trust for sponsoring this initiative.
And Nandi, who's almost certainly joining us remotely, is such a competent person and great member of our staff. Okay, Dave Ellis-Smith is not here as well, so we have a little presentation from us.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Ellis-Smith, and I'm the Science and Spatial Planning Project Manager at BirdLife South Africa. One of my roles is to oversee the BirdLife South Africa checklist of birds, all of those that have been verified to have occurred in South Africa, Eswatini and Lesotho. The BirdLife South Africa checklist is presided over by the BirdLife South Africa List and Rarities Committee, which is a streamlined and more efficient amalgamation of the previous National Rarities Committee and List Committees consolidated in 2024. The committee is chaired by Dr. Chris Lotz of Birding Eco Tours and is managed and facilitated by myself. And it comprises 18 nationally and internationally renowned ornithologists, academics, leading bird guides and conservationists. Records of new bird species occurrences are vetted by the committee, and it also presides over reviewing proposed common name changes proposed by the IOC, ensuring that common names of bird species in our region best reflect our birding community but remain scientifically sound. 2024 was a busy year for taxonomic changes imposed by the IOC, and they introduced 2 taxonomic updates to the world's birds at the beginning of 2024, the version 14.1, and during the middle of 2024, the version 14.2. For our region, we lost 1 species in that Barlow's lark was lumped with June lark, and lazy cisticola was also lumped with rock-loving cisticola. We had several species splits, resulting in new names for the birds in our region. So the intermediate egret became the yellow-billed egret, red-fronted tinkerbird became the southern red-fronted tinkerbird, crested guinea fowl became the southern crested guinea fowl, and the rock martin became the large rock martin. We also saw a lot of changes to large numbers of birds in terms of their taxonomy, so their scientific names changed, particularly within the plover families, the flycatcher families, the hawks, and the larks. 2024 was also a very exciting year for twitchers and listers, as 5 additional species were verified to have visited South African shores for the first time, bringing the total number of bird species recorded in South Africa, Lesotho, and Eswatini to a staggering 879. The new species added in 2024 were the ortolan bunting, common diving petrel, Saunders's tern, mascarene martin, and sharp-tailed sandpiper, which can be seen here on the right. Vetting and ratifying species to this list is an exhaustive process, requiring ideally a photograph, but also a written species account. And this written species account needs to entail a great amount of detail. If you happen to have seen a potential rarity, you can see more information about how to write a species account on our website here. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dave. Now it's over to Alan, one of the highlights of the day, the weekend, the year. Alan, please come up and launch the books.
Hi again. So before I get going with the formal speech, I'm going to be talking mostly about the online red data book of birds, which we're formally launching now. Before we get going Vernon is in the audience, and I'm glad to see that we've got something in common besides love of birds, which is also love of colorful socks. And the popular version of this book, which is in print at the moment and which features stories from many people, was actually Vernon's vision. So if we could just give him a round of applause, please. All right, so for the past more than 3 years, BirdLife South Africa has been working with researchers, conservationists, to complete the regional red listing process for the birds of South Africa, Lesotho, and Eswatini. This vast collaborative effort would not have been possible without the help of many people, especially the co-editors of the book, specifically Sanyo, Rose, Shamiso Banda, Simi Bazeng, Machawe Mapalala, David Mapisa, and we were all guided by BirdLife South Africa's Head of Conservation, Anneleen Smith-Robinson. The result is the technical red data book of birds online and the companion book, Birds of the Brink, a more accessible version which highlights the region's birds of conservation concern, as well as some of the people working to protect them. So a step back. Red listing, what is that? It's basically set out to determine the likelihood that a species will go extinct. A category is assigned based on the relevant criteria, such as rates of decline, population size, threats, and range. The process is applied globally to all species and is also applied regionally or nationally using the IUCN guidelines. The results of the red listing process is normally a physical book, starting with Brooks' first formal account published in 1984, based on work by Roy Siegfried and colleagues nearly a decade later. This was followed by Keith Barnes in 2000, and then in 2015, the account edited by Martin Taylor, Ross Wandless, and Fancy Peacock. So how is this accomplished? It's almost impossible to know all things about all birds, although perhaps Peter Ryan is an exception. As such, over the last several years, we have worked with 138 ornithologists, conservationists, and experts. And our work has been made substantially easier thanks to the amazing citizen science datasets hosted by the Fitzpatrick Institute and contributed to by so many special and dedicated birders and conservationists. Again, thank you. Unfortunately, your job is not done yet, as we need your data more now more than ever, as we enter an era of unprecedented global change. Where will we be in 2035? Contributions to these citizen science datasets need to continue so we can document how global change is impacting South Africa's unique and special bird life. So I present the Red Data Book online. This is where this process has led us. So I'm proud to announce what I believe to be the first online regional Red Data Book of birds globally. And this format was chosen as it freed us from the restrictions of page counts, but more importantly, many people gave freely of their time, and so it's only fair that this information is freely available and accessible to all. This is a tool for managers and conservationists and should not be hidden behind paywalls. This book features species accounts for nearly 200 species, as well as 70 endemic and near endemic species listed as least concern. The categories have been integrated, thanks to Dave, into the National Excel checklist, which can be downloaded from the BirdLife South Africa website. So we'll start with the good news. Most of South Africa's 753 non-vagrant species are still not endangered. However, 140 species are either threatened or near threatened. The bottom line is that South Africa's birds are doing worse now than they have ever before. 147 species have been identified to be of conservation concern. In comparison, 132 species were listed in the previous 2015 Red Data Book. The chart on this slide is the Red List Index. The lower you are down on this chart, the closer you get to extinction. The lowest line on this chart are the seabirds. These are still our most threatened group of species overall, due to the impacts of commercial fishing and industry, but more ominously, the threats of house mice on Marion Island. Raptors are the next worse off, with several species uplisted. But what has been the biggest shock of this exercise has been the decline in our waterbird species. Most waterbird species have benefited from human activities over the last several decades. through dam building and other activities and have been least concern. But by water birds, I don't just mean ducks. All the species on this upper part of this screen are water birds in their own way, and we've seen uplistings of species such as lesser flamingo and black stork. So they're all one step closer to becoming extinct in South Africa. Grey heron could also arguably be uplisted, but remains least concern, mostly due to the rescue effect that could be supplied by the population across the rest of Africa. Thanks to SABAP2 and quack, we can see declines in both of these data sets for species such as the great crested grebe, illustrated here. This slide highlights those species of greatest risk of disappearing from South Africa. There are 11 species, which is the same number of species as listed in 2015. However, there are 2 new additions, those in red. The Botha's lark, our endemic species, and leopard-faced vulture. But there are good news stories here too. The crozet shag has been downlisted to endangered, and the wattle crane as well. The wattle crane population is still small and vulnerable to extinction, but has benefited from decades of conservation attention. So the population is currently stable as a result. And that brings us to the crux of why we are here. Conservation works. By you being here and enabling us to do our conservation work, we can save species. This slide features conservation success stories. Cape vulture populations have been increasing in recent years due to dedicated conservation action. Ongoing threats mean it is still vulnerable to extinction, especially if conservation resources are withdrawn. But it is no longer endangered. Southern bald ibis has benefited from conservation attention and monitoring stretching back decades and has been downlisted to near threatened from vulnerable. Spectacled petrel and black-browed albatross have both benefited from improvements on their breeding grounds beyond South Africa's waters. However, they point to the benefit that will arise if BirdLife South Africa can pull off its most ambitious conservation project to date, mouse-free Marion. So, for more tales of hope in a time of hopelessness, do keep an eye out for Birds on the Brink, which will be hitting bookshops later this year. Thank you very much.
Well done to Alan and the team. 3 years of hard work, long nights, weekends. Yeah, it's a huge job, but I don't think people necessarily appreciate how much work went into these 2 documents. So congratulations to you. We've been working on a media release, which was sent out yesterday, Kurt, and there's an embargo for release for use from 5 o'clock this afternoon. So we can now say the Red Data book is officially launched. Well done.
We have one resolution to be passed this afternoon, and that is the resolution relating to the changes in the Constitution. I think Isabel has a copy of the resolution, so I'd like 2 people, please, to sign on behalf of you. If you could put your hands up as to who would be. Thanks, Vernon, and an other. I'm looking at you, Matt. Thank you. And this afternoon we have the great pleasure of awarding an Austin Roberts Memorial Medal Award. And I'd like to ask Anisha to come up and please read the citation. Thanks, Anisha.
So this year's Austin Roberts Memorial Medal is posthumously awarded to Pamela Isdell in recognition of her exceptional contributions to bird conservation in South Africa and beyond. Due to illness, Pamela was unable to receive the award in person. Mark Anderson, CEO of BirdLife South Africa, and Christina Hagen, the Pamela Isdell Fellow of Penguin Conservation, presented the medal to her on the 1st of March. Sadly, Pamela was medevaced to Atlanta on the 10th of March and passed away on the 18th of March. Pamela Isdell was a passionate and dedicated conservationist. Having spent her youth in Zambia and several years in South Africa, she developed a deep love for the African continent, its people, and its natural heritage. Together with her husband Neville, Pamela generously supported numerous conservation efforts in South Africa, the wider Southern African region, and globally. Pamela was especially committed to the work of BirdLife International and its partners, including BirdLife South Africa and Birdwatch Zambia. The Isdells have also supported other leading conservation organizations such as WWF, the Nature Conservancy, SANCOB, and Peace Parks Foundation, not only through financial contributions, but also through service on their governance structures. Pamela served as a board member for SANCOB and provided significant funding to both SANCOB and BirdLife South Africa. For more than a decade, Pamela was one of BirdLife South Africa's most loyal supporters. She funded the Pamela Isdell Fellow of Penguin Conservation, enabling Christina Hagen to lead critical work to establish new mainland colonies for the critically endangered African penguin in areas with healthier fish stocks. Thanks to the support, over 200 juvenile penguins have been released at protective site at De Hoop Nature Reserve, with successful breeding beginning in 2022 and 8 chicks fledged to date. Pamela's long-term vision and unwavering commitment made this pioneering work possible. The Isdell Family Foundation also funds key positions within BirdLife South Africa, including the head of conservation position, which is held by Hanneline Smith-Robinson, who oversees all conservation programs and staff. It also funds the Species Conservation Program Manager's position, that is filled by Dr. Linda van der Heever, who leads efforts to mitigate lead poisoning in vultures. And furthermore, it funds the Conservation Assistant position, which is held by Christy Wooding, who provides vital support to Hanneline and the conservation staff. The Isdell Family Foundation also supports a senior vulture conservation officer within BirdLife Africa, within the BirdLife Africa Partnership Secretariat, who support regional vulture conservation across the SADC region. Pamela was a Golden Bird patron, providing annual unrestricted support to BirdLife South Africa, and is one of the 4 honorary patrons alongside Gaynor Rupert, Dr. Precious Molloy Motsepe, and Mark Shuttleworth. One of the most transformative contributions made by Pamela and Neville was the donation of most of the funds used to purchase and renovate Isdell House, BirdLife South Africa's Johannesburg head office. This environmentally friendly facility includes solar power, rainwater harvesting, and an indigenous garden. They also donated 500,000 rand towards the purchase and renovation of the Cape Town office. Following an initial donation of 150,000 rand to the Mouse-Free Marion project, a critical effort to eradicate invasive mice from Marion Island, Pamela and Neville made a further donation of over 9 million rand in January 2025, greatly accelerating progress on this important initiative. Pamela was deeply honored to receive the Austin Roberts Memorial Award, and we are grateful that she had the opportunity to accept it on the 1st of March. We are also pleased that her husband Neville could join us virtually from France today. Her daughter Cara and her family have made efforts to attend from the USA, and her dedicated private secretaries Carol Mastrioni and McCall Webster are with us here today. In closing, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Pamela for her extraordinary legacy. Our sincere gratitude also goes to Neville and Cara for their continued support. We remain committed to honoring Pamela's legacy, especially by advancing the conservation of the African penguin and South Africa's remarkable bird life. Thank you.
Musical chairs.
Yes. We're nearing the end of our annual general meeting, so I'd just like to ask if there's any other business to be addressed from anybody. Good. Well, in that case, we will, before we let you go, we're just going to show you our promotional video, which was released fairly recently at the beginning of this year. Do I have to do something else here, Mark?
Birds, they're all around us.
They connect us.
Regardless of language.
Across cultures.
Beyond borders.
Despite our differences, they unite us.
They inspire us and bring us joy.
Birds are indicators of the health of our environment.
Our grasslands, fragile wetlands,
Forests.
And our majestic oceans.
They tell us when something is wrong.
The canary in the coal mine.
What is good for birds is good for people.
Good for communities, for business, for the future.
but many of them need our help.
For over 100 years, we have been studying and conserving birds.
We've been watching them.
And watching over them.
And maybe a little obsessed with them.
Which is why we are doing everything we can
to ensure they survive and thrive, so that our children and their children
can also experience the wonder of birds.
We are educating the next generation.
Creating jobs.
Empowering communities.
Protecting habitats.
Building a sustainable future.
Raising awareness.
Preventing extinction.
Creating hope.
We are BirdLife South Africa. We are giving conservation wings.
I've watched that so many times that it just chokes me up every time I watch it. So with that, I would like to just, that concludes our annual general meeting this year, and the video does things to me. Mark, please do it. That concludes the business for our annual general meeting this year. We've done very well on time, so please will you all join us for a drink outside and spend as much time as you would like just circulating and chatting to all of us and everybody who presented today. Don't get up yet. Oh, okay.
Okay, we have some wine to taste. There's a few bottles which I'd like to encourage you to taste. It's Darby Chamberlain. Darby, and please come up. Yeah. Darby had Giles Webb from Thelema Wine Estate bottle 1,500 magnums of a Thelema blend, of which 500 have been donated to BirdLife South Africa to use for our awareness and fundraising work. Darby, thank you very much. And and we need to give Darby's wife, Min, credit for coming up with a wonderful design on the bottles. So well done, Min, for that. This really is brilliant. And Christina Hagen is not here. She's actually out at the Hoop at the moment, releasing 30 penguins with our friends from Sankob. So, but we're giving these bottles of wine, some bottles of wine, to people who've played an important role in the recent out-of-court settlement and litigation. So if the two Sankob people could come over, Natalie, Nikki. Okay. And then Kata, who's no longer with Sankob, but is here with us. Kata, where are you? Please come up and get your bottle. You like it? You like the size? Nikki says she loves the size. That'll be enough for one sitting, will it? Okay, then we would have not been successful in this work without the support of Kate and Nina. Kate from Biodiversity Law Centre is here. Kate, if you can come up, please. They were our pro bono attorneys, and I do believe we would have not managed to achieve what we did, Kate, without you and your colleagues' support. Thank you very much for that. Dobby, do you want to say anything? Up here with it. Dobby. I'm standing. I'll lower the microphone a foot or two.
Thank you, Mark. No, it's an absolute privilege and a pleasure to be part of this organization. It is so efficient. It's so much passion and expertise is involved here. And it's an absolute privilege for me to be part of it. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, the team. Thank you.
Okay, and no, pleasure. We've got Alistair, Christina, Kirsten, others have got to decide what to do with the other 400 bottles, how they can work for us. Mike, don't look at me like that. I know he enjoys his red wine. Okay, before we close, just thanks to the team who've organized this event, particularly Claire and Isabel. Behind the scenes, a lot of work's been done. So Claire back there, our events manager. And Isabel, our HR manager and executive assistant. Thank you very much, Isabel, for. And then Kurt Martin, our comms manager, has also been working very hard. So thanks, Kurt, for we're still working. And our AV team, you guys have been wonderful. Thanks very much for helping us. And we also appreciate this venue. It's a very unique venue for an AGM. We wish the Proteas were playing Australia, beating Australia. So thanks very much for your time, and please join us outside for a drink and some snacks. Thank you.